One last conversation before we, of course, say goodbye here on Morning Live. We hand over to the agenda, and Nompusi Ziba is here. She will continue to broadcast from Budget 2023, and SABC, of course, bringing you that address live at 2 o'clock. And so many issues. I mean, we've spoken through a lot this morning and spoken to different role players and very interesting perspectives, I must say, that have been handed here. But one thing we haven't spoken about, and that is small businesses. Now, you and I know that running a business and a small business is not easy to begin with, but when you have all of the electricity and energy challenges that are facing us right now, how do you keep the doors open? How do you keep your ice cream store open? How do you keep fresh produce? How do you do anything, in fact, that requires electricity? And everything requires electricity. You're not necessarily earning the money to buy generators and inverters. So that means you close your doors, which means people lose jobs. And that is the reality of many South Africans right now. Coming out of COVID, straight into an emergency energy crisis. How do you operate? Well, let's chat to the man who watches this all the time. And Sean Tierneson is the founder of Property Point Incubator. He's also from the Johannesburg Chamber of Commerce, the president there at the moment. I mean, you know, Sean, when you think of small businesses, it's a great worry. That is the heart of any economy, is small business, but they are closing and suffering.
Yes, definitely. I think that we often say that small business are the job creators in an economy, in an emerging market like ourselves. You need a robust small business environment, but small businesses haven't had any reprieve from COVID to the energy crisis that we face ourselves in at the moment. We want some answers from the finance minister around how they will be supporting small businesses, firstly from an energy perspective in terms of making opportunities available for them to acquire either finance or opportunities for energy solutions, and then secondly funding in order to go through this challenging time of being able to survive. So those are some of the key aspects that we want to hear from the finance minister today.
So I want to take us back to last year when we were talking about the struggling businesses, and the minister addressed the issue of struggling businesses, and he had already said that he's going to use this mechanism called the government-initiated bounce-back scheme. 15 billion rand was to be deployed to this. 140 million in loans has only been approved, and 77 million has been dispersed, and that was towards the end of last year. Yeah. Now, I mean, you've got this money sitting there waiting to help small businesses, and only 77 million of 15 billion has been approved. What are we waiting for?
Clearly, government does not know how to be able to effectively support businesses. I think in the SONA address this year, again, the bounce back scheme made a comeback from the president. Now it will be put in place to be able to finance solar solutions for small businesses. Development finance corporations and banks is able to utilize some of that funding for leasing of solar energy solutions. But once again, there's no detail in the market. So, like, as you said, the money was put into the fiscus, into the budget last year, but nothing actually came to the forefront. We need some more details now from the minister in terms of how small businesses are able to access this funding and how they're able to input that into their businesses.
Yeah, and I remember clearly at one stage the president had said, the one thing we're going to do is remove the red tape and stop making it difficult to do business in South Africa. What has changed?
So the last announcement was Sipho Nkosi as heading up the Red Tape Commission and being able to reduce that red tape. But we've seen nothing in the marketplace. The presidency has said they will be looking at some amendments to the Business Act, and hopefully that will make the ease of doing business for small businesses easier. The red tape is directly linked as well to the access to funding for small businesses. In order to reduce that red tape, you will create more accessibility for businesses to take up those opportunities in the market.
Yeah. I mean, you spoke about incentives, and that's been quite a key conversation that we've been having with all of the analysts here this morning, talking about incentives for putting solar. Do you think that'll apply to just business, or can we see something like that being for the individual, the home use as well?
Yeah, I think hopefully in terms of the banks being able to get access to that funding, it will create an opportunity for a mass market rollout, and where individuals will be able to potentially go to their local bank and get funding in order to set up themselves from a solar perspective. But it's an additional cost to the household. In a tough economy, in a crisis that we're facing ourselves in, increased inflation, so it's not a reprieve at all for the individual on the street.
You know, the reality is that, and I mean, I'll just tell you an experience of speaking to somebody who owns something as simple as a dog cleaning service, or they clean your pets, but they've ordered an inverter or a generator. The generator is now stuck at the port because there's a problem with the ports at the moment, so she can't get it. She can't operate her business. She's already gotten herself into debt to buy this generator, and she sits doing nothing because we're now sitting at stage 6 load shedding. Help me understand what is being done here, because infrastructure is falling apart, the transport system is falling apart, the energy crisis is in a dire situation, and then of course everything that has been ruined from floods and natural disasters is not being repaired.
Yes, and I think it's that knock-on effect in the economy and that knock-on effect to small businesses that needs immediate action. So it is a concern when we allocate certain budgets, for instance, like the bounce back scheme, to support small businesses, and it does not get allocated. There's a couple of other things that the President mentioned. There's a fund that will be made available with the SASMME fund, where government has put $2.5 billion in place. There's additional funding, $1.4 billion towards CIFA and CEDA. We want to see how that will be activated in the marketplace and how businesses and small businesses are able to gain access to this funding. Because as you said, you know, if you are in a community, your greengrocer will not be able to operate effectively because his produce is going off. That will have a knock-on effect on, for instance, the jobs that he's able to create or sustain. And if we don't have immediate action, we're going to have dire economic consequences.
Yeah, we certainly are. There's so much more I want to ask you, but I can't. We don't have time. But I know you're going to be back on SABC channels talking more about this with pre-analysis as well as post-analysis. So let's hope for the best. Sean, thank you. Thank you so much for talking to us here on the program. Sean Tennyson is the founder of Property Point Incubator, also for the Johannesburg Chamber of Commerce president. So dealing with small businesses, looking at the problems that small businesses are going through at this very, very difficult time in South Africa. So we're all going to be watching 2 o'clock to see what the finance minister can do for us, because at this point in time, he needs to do a lot to balance acts. And the reality is, remember, elections next year. So he has to make the majority happy, but find money in places that perhaps you don't even know exist. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a beautiful day. And that's it from Cape Town. Bye-bye. Let's hand it back to Johannesburg.